We knew it was her the moment we heard that god-awful Subaru backfire at the top of the hill, right before it coughed out a puff of blue smoke like a dying dragon. It rolled halfway onto our ranch road again. I wasn't even shocked anymore. Grandpa Roy just spit into the dirt, muttered something about gravel demons under his breath, and grabbed his binoculars even though we were barely 50 feet away. And Karen was hard to miss in that neon pink visor that made her look like a disgruntled tennis umpire who'd lost the will to argue. She climbed out of the car, opened the trunk like she was unveiling treasure, and yep, you guessed it, started shoveling gravel onto our private road like she was doing us some big favor. This was the third time this month, and it was only the 12th. Grandpa didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, lips tightening into a straight line, which trust me is never a good sign. When Grandpa got quiet, things got biblical. See, this wasn't just about gravel. This was about pride, territory, and the principle of levying 50 years on land you built with your own bare hands only to have it peed on metaphorically and once, literally be a woman who thought property lines were just suggestions. Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was a plague in yoga pants. It all started last fall when Karen moved into that blue prefab house up the ridge that she called Modern Eco Home. We affectionately referred to it as the aluminum coffin. Her first offense was coming over to tell us that our horses were too noisy. Then there was a strongly worded letter about manure runoff. After that, when we tried to patch the washout on our ranch road ourselves, our road, mind you, she said we were violating HOA guidelines. That's when Grandpa started calling her Gravel Karen. Today, though, was different. Today, she didn't dump just a little gravel. She unloaded an entire truck bed of it. And this stuff looked store-bought and suspiciously sparkly like it belonged in a fish tank. By the time she was done, the whole lower path looked like a craft store exploded. And the worst part? She used concrete mix. We could already feel it hardening under the morning sun like our hopes and dreams. Grandpa finally turned to me, his voice low and steady, and said, "Go fetch the shovel." Not the red one, the one from the war. That meant Mildred. Mildred was a dented steel shovel with a cracked oak handle, and according to family legend, it had once been used to dig a trench, a grave, and a latrina, possibly all in the same day. When Grandpa asked for Mildred, it meant revenge was no longer theoretical. We didn't call the sheriff. Not yet. That would have been the reasonable thing to do. But Grandpa had passed the point where reason was even a concept. He didn't yell. He didn't wave his fists. He just started pacing the yard, hands behind his back, like a general planning a siege. I followed him, notebook in hand, half confused, half terrified, and fully entertained. He started mumbling under his breath, "Barrel do, but it's got the wobble. Got to anchor the load. Maybe tarp it down." I just kept scribbling. The plan, simple in concept, unhinged in execution, was to return every single speck of gravel she dumped on our land. All of it. Every last shiny fish tank-looking piece of it. And we'd give it to her in the one place she couldn't ignore, her trunk. She left it open, Grandpa noted, almost admiringly. "Like an NVY Tatayon," he said. "Like a fool Leah VYing their gates opened during war." So we waited. Around noon, when the dust from her tires had vanished down the ridge, Grandpa marched down with Mildred. I followed, wheelbarrow in tow, and we began. Scoop after scoop, chunk after chunk, we filled that Subaru's trunk with the gravel she'd dumped on us. And we didn't just throw it, I know no. We arranged it like a decorative gravel Zen garden of justice. At one point, Grandpa found a smooth rock shaped like Idaho and placed it right on her emergency triangle. "So she knows it's from us," he said. Halfway through, the mailman drove by in his rust bucket of a Jeep, slowed to a stop, and squinted, seeing Grandpa gently patting down a gravel mound in the trunk of Karen's car. "Should I come back later?" the mailman asked. Grandpa looked up, smiled sweetly, and said, "Depends if you want to be an accomplice or a witness." The mailman didn't need any more encouragement. He drove off so fast that he left half the county's mail in a ditch. We were laughing so hard by the time we finished that Grandpa had to sit down on an overturned feed bucket just to catch his breath. "Damn," he said between gasps. "Feels like church, don't it?" I nodded. In that moment, I never felt closer to the man, watching the sun glint off that perfect mound of gravel, symbolic vengeance at its finest. The cherry on top? Grandpa pulled out a hand-painted sign from the shed, must have made it in advance, which was deeply concerning, and stuck it in the gravel pile inside the trunk. It read, "Return to sender." We sat on the porch like nothing had happened, sipping iced tea, playing cribbage and waiting for her to return. She'd arrive at dusk. The Subaru rolled into the driveway, and the silence was palpable. Then came the shriek. A screech so high-pitched, I'm pretty sure it made one of our chickens pass out. She stood at the back of her car, arms flailing, phone in hand, probably dialing the sheriff. Grandpa just smiled and said, "About time we got the law involved." Then he stood, stretched his back, and walked inside. And that was the moment. The moment when everything went from neighborly bickering to small-town warfare. The moment Grandpa Roy stopped being just an old rancher and became something else entirely. Something Karen would come to fear. Something made of gravel, vengeance, and Mildred. By morning, the internet had already done its work. Someone, likely the mailman, snapped a photo of Grandpa kneeling beside Karen's trunk full of gravel, like he was paying respects at the tomb of the unknown shoveler. It got uploaded to the local Facebook group, and by breakfast, there were over 180 comments. Most of them read things like "Roy strikes again" or "Justice is gritty." Karen tried replying, claiming it was property vandalism, but no one took her seriously, not after she'd called a rooster a rural domestic terrorist. The town had picked a side. Most people stood with Grandpa. A few younger folks, the ones who had moved in from out of state and said things like, "Cow smell is triggering," sided with Karen. But the general VYB? People were low VYing the drama, watching this whole gravel war unfold like a backyard courtroom drama. Sheriff Danny, however, was less amused. He showed up around 10 a.m. in his dusty cruiser, parked beside the Subaru still sitting on our driveway like an abandoned art project, and got out with that tired look he reserved for calls involving both Karen and Grandpa. "Roy, tell me I don't have to file paperwork today," Sheriff Danny sighed. Grandpa handed him a glass of sweet tea instead. "That depends, Danny," Grandpa said. "You here to arrest a war hero for returning stolen minerals? Or are you here to appreciate fine landscape art?" Sheriff Danny glanced at the car, tried to keep a straight face, but failed halfway through a sip of tea. "You filled her trunk with it?" Grandpa nodded proudly. "Precision shoveled. We even tamped it." Danny muttered something about early retirement and trudged down to inspect the vehicle. Karen arrived not 5 minutes later, this time with sunglasses, a folder of papers, and that kind of erratic rage only people who believe HOAs are a DVYNE calling can have. She stormed past the sheriff, waving her folder like a sword, and began shouting legal-sounding words in no particular order. Harassment, intentional stress, road aggression. Sheriff Danny held up a hand, like he was stopping a wild turkey fight. "Karen, stop. Just breathe and tell me why you dumped gravel on their ranch road again." She pulled out a poorly printed satellite image and jabbed at it. "Because this road viola easement code. This is public access. I'm making it safer." Grandpa let out a chuckle that could have cracked asphalt. "Public? This road's been ours since '76, Grandpa said. "That's when the county gave up trying to pave it and told us to do what we want." Karen didn't skip a beat. She waved another paper. "I formed an HOA last month. It includes every house on the North Ridge, including yours. You're in violation of new terrain aesthetics protocols." Sheriff Danny blinked. "Terrain? What?" Karen looked triumphant, like someone who'd finally cornered a raccoon after years of it eating their garden. "Aesthetics," she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Gravel is regulated," she continued, "as per Section 3 of the North Ridge Beautification and Order Ordinance." Sheriff Danny glanced at the document and raised a brow. "Karen, this is a Word document. You typed this last night. It says Karen's HOA at the top. In Comic Sans." Karen froze. Grandpa leaned in and whispered, "Only tyrants and toddlers use Comic Sans for legal documents." By this point, Karen was turning red, stumbling over phrases like foundational authority and legal jurisdiction. She didn't even hear Sheriff Danny when he told her the road wasn't public. Her HOA wasn't recognized by the county, and the gravel in her car? Technically, it was just a returned item. Not theft. Not vandalism. Justice. And that, folks, was just the beginning.